All right, guys, listen up. I am giving you some hints and some help on this quiz. First of all, I want to start with what I thought were the gifts, and some of you are still not getting these gifts. Now, one of the gifts, which is something I have definitely seen asked about on end-of-course exams, is about the x-axis and the y-axis. Let's look at the x-axis, please. Is the x-axis a line? Absolutely, it's a line. What kind of line is it? A linear line. That's brilliant. It's a horizontal line. That's what I was looking for. I'm just going to draw in some horizontal lines, and you guys are so good at telling me the equations of these lines. Tell me what the equation of this line right here is right below the... No, what's the whole equation of that line? Y equals -1. Now, the reason why the equation to that line is y equals -1. Not only is the y-intercept -1 on that line, and the slope 0, that's why there's no x in there, because 0 times x disappears. Every single point anywhere on this line has a y value of -1. This point right here is 1, -1, 2, -1, 3, -1, -1, -1. All the y values are the same. That's true for every horizontal line. All you need to know for a horizontal line is one point, and you look at the y value of that point. It doesn't even have to be the y-intercept. It just has to be one point. Okay, so what's the equation of this line right here? Y equals -2. What's the equation one space above the x-axis? Now, why is it so hard for you then to give me the equation of the x-axis? What is the equation of the x-axis? Y equals 0. The equation of the x-axis is y equals 0. Repeat that after me, please. What's the equation of the x-axis? Y equals 0. What's the equation of the x-axis? Y equals 0. Let's look at some points that are on the x-axis. What's this point right here? 0, 0. What's this point right here? 1, 0. What's this point right here? 2, 0. Do you see a pattern? Where do they all have something in common? In the y's. And what is the y value of every single point? That's why the equation of the x-axis is y equals 0. And this drives me crazy. I'll put that on a quiz or a test or a warm-up, and I'll have kids go, what x-axis? And I want to say, what do you mean, what x-axis? The x-axis. Okay, now, let's talk about the y-axis. Is the y-axis a line? It absolutely is. And guess what? It's one of those sneaky, non-function, non-following the rules, outlaw lines. Slope is undefined. Nothing about that line is normal. Okay, let's talk about some other vertical lines. The y-axis is a vertical line, and those are those lines that don't follow any rules. Those are those lines that aren't functions. What's the equation of this vertical line? X equals 1. Now, why is the equation of that line x equals 1? Well, because it has an x-intercept of 1, absolutely. And every x value on that line is 1. Look at this point. That's 1, 1. Look at this point. That's 1, 2. Look at this point. 1, 3. Look at this point down here. 1, -1. Every x value, including the x-intercept, is 1. I don't need to know 2 points to find the equation of a vertical line. I just need to know it's a vertical line, and I need to know 1 point, and I need to know the x value of that point, because all of the x's on every vertical line are the same. That's how they work. What's the equation of this vertical line? One space to the x equals -1. Okay, then why is it so difficult for you guys to tell me the equation of the y-axis? What's the equation of the y-axis? X equals 0. Guess what every x value on the y-axis is? 0. That's why the equation of the y-axis is x equals 0. What's the equation of the y-axis? X equals 0. That is supposed to be a gift. Now, here were some other gifts. Some of you didn't appreciate them. I am thinking of a line that has a slope of 0 and it goes through the point 7, negative 5. Y equals negative 5. I still have kids missing this one, and this one bothers me for a couple of reasons. First of all, we've been over it and over it. Second of all, when you see a slope of 0, you should automatically think horizontal line. All horizontal lines are y equals a number, and all you need is one y number, and the y number I was given is negative 5. Third of all, if you didn't know that, then do the math. Y equals mx plus b. My y value is negative 5. My slope value is 0. My x value is 7. What's 0 times 7? So negative 5 equals 0 plus b. What does b equal? Negative 5. So then you could write the equation y equals 0x minus 5. And then hopefully you'd realize I don't need to write 0x. That's going to disappear anyway. It's just y equals negative 5. So there is no excuse to miss that one. Yes. Okay, let me finish this, and then I'm gonna ask for specific ones because I want to make sure that you get the gifts. I don't want you to miss the gifts. I'm thinking of a line that's got an undefined slope. Okay, I'm hearing way too much chatter. Immediately when you see that, you should think that's weird. It is weird to have a slope that's not a number. Most slopes are numbers. These are the outlaws. These are the only lines that start out x equals. They don't have the letter y anywhere in them. They don't have a y-intercept. They are not functions. Nothing about them is normal. They don't have a slope. Nothing normal happens with these kinds of lines. All I need to give you is 1 point. Negative 20, positive 80. What's the equation of that line? X equals negative 20. Please do not pass up those gifts. Now here's the problem with this one, guys. Listen. You can't do the work here. This is vertical. Unfortunately, you can't plug in, like if you're trying to do the work to find the b, you can't put in an undefined slope. It doesn't exist. So this is a situation where, unfortunately, you're just going to have to memorize it. To me, it's easy to think about this is weird, and a line starting out with x is weird. All of our lines usually start out with y. Those two weird things go together, right? Weird things attract, right? Like Malaysia. Just kidding. All right. Now, another gift. I gave you a question that had a T-chart. And I didn't write the question, but what I wanted was the equation of this line. The calculator can do that for you, folks. There is no excuse to miss one like this. Stat, edit, stat, calculate. If you don't know the equation but you do know points, then you go to stat, edit, and you put them in. So we're going to put in 4, 3, and then we're going to put in 7, 5, 4, 3, 7, 5. Everything happens in stat. When you don't know the equation, but you do know points, everything happens in stat. First we put them in through stat edit, then we go right back to stat again, but this time we want to calculate. We're looking for the equation of a line, which is all the way down to number 4. Enter, 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 enter. Unfortunately, it's fractions, but hopefully you recognize, decimals, hopefully you recognize what those are. That would be y equals 2/3 x plus 1/3. And if you didn't recognize what those repeating decimals were, then you could just go to your regular screen, put in a whole bunch of 6s, and hit math, enter, enter, and it'll tell you it's 2/3. All right. Here is another situation that drove me crazy. Let's say that you did this work and you came up with this answer, y equals 5x plus 3. And all I asked you for is what is the slope? I had kids tell me, oh, the slope is y equals 5x plus 3. That is not the slope. If you put y equals 5x, that's even worse. What I wanted to see was 5. The slope is 5. If you put y equals 5, that's even worse. You could put m equals 5. You could put slope equals 5. And you know what even drives me crazier? When kids tell me the slope is 5x. That drives me insane. Slope is a number. It is a number. Okay, because listen up, guys. What if I'd asked you for the y-intercept? If I ask you for the y-intercept and you put y equals 5x plus 3, I'm counting it wrong. If I ask you for the y-intercept, what do you put? 3. Shh. Okay, so please answer the question the way it is asked. Also, there was a question that said, what is the y-coordinate of the point where, I'm making this up, 4x minus 3y equals 24 intersects the y-axis? And again, this was straight off the wording from an end-of-course exam. They love to take simple questions and try to make them sound complicated. That is a fancy way to say, what's the y-intercept? Now, why did they say what's the y-coordinate? Because the x-coordinate has to be 0. Every y-intercept has an x-coordinate of 0. They are asking you to find the y-intercept. Now, let's talk about how you could do that. And I'm getting really frustrated at the fact that several of you are not listening who really need to be listening. To find the y-intercept, there's more than one way to do it. Some of you chose to take this equation and put it in slope-intercept form. That's fabulous. That will absolutely work. Then you would get y equals positive 4/3 x minus 8. Now, would you put on the answer form y equals 4/3 x minus 8? What would you put on the answer form? Negative 8. That's the y value where it intersects the y-axis. In other words, that's the y-intercept. Here's another thing you could have done, folks. Please watch, which I think this way is easier. Y-intercepts happen when x is 0. Put a 0 in here. What's 4 times 0? It's like this disappears completely and you have a simple little equation. Negative 3y equals 24. Divide by negative 3 and look what you get. That goes so much faster to me. I've told you a lot of things before, but it was obvious some of you didn't listen. Okay, look at this. Y equals 2/3 x minus 24. And I want you to find the coordinates of the point. I want a whole point here where it intersects the x-axis. What am I asking for? The roots, the zeros, the x-intercepts, exactly. Now, there are several ways to do that. You could put a 0 in for y and do it with your brain. It's not going to be as easy to do it that way. It's not as easy to find x-intercepts with your pencil and your paper. I could do it though. That happens when y is 0. The easiest thing is the calculator way, I think. Now let me show you what some kids did. And they call me over and they say, my calculator's broken. It's broken. It's not working. Because this is what they did. They put in y equals 2/3 x minus 24. And then they went, oh, well, first of all, they didn't zoom out. Hold on, let me unzoom. Let me go back to zoom 6. And then they went second function, calculate, intersection, first curve, second curve, and it wouldn't get off second curve. And they're, okay, it's broken. It's not because they can't see it, it's because I only put in one function. You can't intersect anything with one function. What am I also supposed to put in if I'm looking for the zeros? You must have to put in y equals 0. Now, there's another trick to this one. You can't see this one because it's way down here. So how do I get to see it? Zoom out. And after you hit zoom out, you have to hit enter. If the calculator can't see where it's intersecting, it won't tell you. Now I can do it. Second function, calculate, intersection, first curve, second curve, guess. 36, 0. So how would I write the answer? 36, 0, because it asked you for the coordinates of the point where it intersected the x-axis. That's 36, 0. Now, do you know about parallel lines? They have the same slope. So if I told you to go through the point 6, negative 8, and be parallel to 3x minus 4y equals 12, that's a sneaky, sneaky way to tell you what slope to use. First of all, I'm making sure you know about parallel lines. Parallel lines have the same slope. Second of all, I gave you a line that's in standard form. That's not very nice of me, is it? You've got to work this around. You've got to move stuff around. I am a meanie. I agree. You have got to figure out the slope of this line. What is it? It's 3/4. That means I need to use the slope of 3/4. I'm done with that line now. That's all I needed from it was the slope. Now, real quick, are you listening? What if I had wanted it to be perpendicular, not parallel? Then it would be negative 4/3. Okay, so I think I do both of those on the quiz. I might ask you to be parallel to it or perpendicular to it. Parallel, you use the same slope. And now, unfortunately, folks, there's not a way to do this in the calculator, but let me show you what you should do. First of all, just make sure you do this part very, very carefully so that you start with the right slope. If you don't start with the right slope, it's not going to work at all. Okay, second of all, now I got to find my b value. So y equals mx plus b. Negative 8 equals 3/4 times 6/1 plus b. Negative 8 equals 18/4 plus b. I would probably grab my calculator now. How am I going to answer that? What do I got to do with that 18/4? Negative 8 minus, because I got to move that over, and you got to put it in parentheses, or it's going to subtract 18 first and then divide that answer by 4. You've got to put 18/4 in parentheses. Okay, and that's going to tell me, okay, your b value should be negative 12.5 or negative 12.5. So now I know my equation should be y equals 3/4 x minus 12.5 or 25/2 or 12.5. I could put any of those numbers. The very least that you should do now is put this in your calculator to see what? If this point is on there. That's at least one little check you can do. It's not 100% guaranteed you're right, because we're not 100% sure if you got the right slope. You had to do that part correct as well. But you should at least check to see that that point is there. Let's do that. Y equals 3/4 x minus 12.5. And then I'm going to look at my t-chart, and I better have the point 6/8. I'm sorry, 6, negative 8. And it is there. So that at least gives me a little bit of a warm fuzzy that I got the right b value. Hopefully I use the right slope as well. Now, was there anything else that you feel like I need to talk about before I let you finish/fix your quiz? Quickly, yes. Okay. If I tell you the x-intercept is 5, oh, I'm sorry, not just x. X-intercept is 5 and the y-intercept is negative 7. That is a tricky way of me giving you 2 points. If I give you 2 points, that's 5, 0, 0, negative 7. And guess what? Once you write the 2 points, the calculator can find the whole equation for you. How? Stat edit, stat calculate. Or you figure out the slope and you already know the y-intercept, then you can write the equation. Either thing. Either thing. All right, yours. Standard form. All right. Shh. Here's a line that's not in standard form. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 7. That's in slope-intercept form. And if I asked you to tell me the slope, what would you tell me? Negative 2/3. Not negative 2/3 x, or I will scream. If I ask you for the y-intercept, what would you say? 7. Okay, but I asked you a question like this, and I said put it in standard form. Standard form cannot have fractions. Let's multiply the whole equation by 3. 3 times y is 3 times y. 3 times negative 2/3. This is going to become negative 6/3. Negative 2x. The reason why I chose 3 is because I knew these 3's would cancel, and I'd be left with that negative 2 on top, and then the x. And then what's 3 times 7? 21. Then you got to put the x's and y's on the same side, so that guy has to come over here. So it's 2x plus 3y equals 21, and there's your standard form. It's not that there can't be negatives. There cannot be fractions. Now, sometimes I did tell you that they force the x's to be positive. It just so happened that this didn't have any negatives. But let's say that it ended up like this. Negative 5x plus 7y equals negative 3. That could be acceptable, but most of the time on answer choices, I usually see them force the x to be positive. So what's another way I could write that? 5x minus 7y equals positive 3. Those are both the same thing. The one thing that is 100% sure, x's, or two things, x's and y's have to be on the same side, and there cannot be fractions. All right. We have time for maybe one more. What? To find the what? There's no inequalities on the quiz. Let's worry about that another day. Anything else? All right, now don't forget your homework. When you are done, I'm going to pass back your quizzes, and it's going to be just like it's a quiz. I don't want to hear talking, ladies. When you're done, you're going to turn it in exactly where you did yesterday. Fix your answers, finish your answers, do whatever you got to do, and then when you are done and you have turned it in, your homework is page 337, 13 to 22.